We are joined by Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Senator, appreciate you making the time, sir.
Absolutely. Good to be with y'all.
So we were talking polls. We're talking about where the primary stands earlier in the program, Senator. And all the polls that we can see, you're basically running in fourth, somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 percentage points of support. How are you going to change this around between now and when people are actually voting? And what are you bringing to this GOP primary that makes you a better choice than your top rivals, namely Trump, DeSantis, and Haley?
Well, certainly the voters in Iowa, they break late, so they're just now tuning in. So the good news is that I have doubled my presence in Iowa. I totally expect and have seen signs that will continue to move in the right direction from the polling perspective. But the thing that we bring to the table that is unique is that the truth of my life destroys the lies of the radical left. If this general election is going to be about whether or not conservatism works, I'm the candidate that we need talking and leading on that subject. If we're going to have a conversation about why it's important for us to close the southern border and stop fentanyl from killing 70,000 lives and what we can do about that, I'm the one person in the race who has already led on the laws that will change that trajectory for our nation. As the leading person on the banking committee, we have an opportunity to literally stop 70,000 Americans from dying. If I were president, I would sign my legislation that sanctions the Mexican cartels, the only person who already has a plan in place, passed through the banking committee and a part of the defense spending for the country. If you want someone who can go into the south side of Chicago, into black churches, into Brazilian churches, into Hispanic communities, into the majority community, and have the same conversation about conservatism and convert people to our side of the aisle, I'm the best and maybe the only candidate, not who can do it, but who's already getting it done right now.
Talking to Senator Tim Scott, obviously right now, international relations, a huge discussion point. What do you think we should be doing in Ukraine and Israel? Should those issues be connected in your mind? Should they be separated? And how would you analyze them if you were commander-in-chief right now and called upon to decide what should be happening from a U.S. perspective associated with both Ukraine and Israel?
The first leap in the right direction is to have a silo package that reinforces that America is loyal to our allies and lethal to our common adversaries. And that means supporting the aid for Israel in a standalone package. The world needs to know that the strategy of the Biden administration, the strategy of appeasement, is an abysmal failure with proof positive already can be seen in the hostages taken, the blood that has been pouring out, and the lack of response from this administration. We need a leader who actually puts the pedal to the metal and causes them to blink. Today, because of the feckless leadership of Joe Biden, it looks like America is blinking because the president cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. On Ukraine, I would always keep that as a separate discussion as it relates to funding. I have supported Ukraine without any question, but we need to have the kind of accountability that restores confidence from the American people on understanding why it is in our national vital interest without having the accountability on the dollars that have been spent and invested in Ukraine, without having a president that understands the importance of sharing with the American people that the vast majority of those resources comes back for military purchases and as a loan guarantee. Without having that conversation, it will be very difficult for us to have the support for Ukraine. But if
Senator Scott, why is it in the national security interest of the American people to make sure that Ukraine continues this fight against Russia at the level that it's been fighting?
The first thing is that degrading the Russian military is in America's national vital interest. Until this war started, the greatest military threat to America was the Russian military. The long-term threat to our nation is the buildup in China, but they are just getting there. They are not there. So having the devastation brought to the Russian military through our resources and the incredibly high price of Ukrainian blood has been strategic and impactful and effective in keeping not only the homeland safe, which is the priority, but also our NATO allies that are contiguous with Ukraine and Russia. That combination, according to Article 5, keeps our men and women, our troops here in America and not positioned strategically.
Would you fund to the same degree that we've seen so far, Senator Scott? If you were president for 4 years and the fighting in Russia and Ukraine continued as is, would you continue the funding at its current level for 4 years of your presidency?
I would not. I've said that already in that I've rejected the first package, the $106 billion, where President Biden has sought to leverage Israel's war for more funding for Ukraine. I would bifurcate that package. It is the only effective way for us to show strength with Israel and accountability with Ukraine is to separate those two packages.
Senator Scott, you basically, it seems, have adopted the burn the ship strategy, which I respect when it comes to Iowa. You've relocated much of your campaign. You're all in Iowa. We're 10 weeks out. You said a lot of people still not paying attention, that things break late. What does your campaign need to do to guarantee that it continues into New Hampshire and into Iowa in terms of where you finish? So right now, as Buck laid out, you're sitting around fourth. Is top four good enough in Iowa to go to New Hampshire? What do you need to see in order to keep your campaign rolling?
Well, let me first define the definition of breaking late, the voters breaking late. Number one, in 2011, Herman Cain, and 2015, Ben Carson, the two leading candidates in the Des Moines Register poll. So we know that the voters break late. For us to continue on, we have to show strength in Iowa, and we're going to do that. And we'll see you then in New Hampshire, and then we'll win in South Carolina.
Okay, so, but strength in Iowa, just kind of putting out the expectations. Is that top three? Is that top two? What does that have to look like to you to be, hey, this was a successful Iowa caucus in 10 weeks when those numbers come in?
Well, there's no doubt we're competing to win. I mean, so at the end of the day, that's our goal. And so being in the top two, is, in my opinion, where you want to be. But I have learned to fight until the end. Therefore, we are going to stay in it until we win it. And we believe we get there by having a very strong showing in Iowa and then moving our campaign with momentum into New Hampshire. We will feel it in the air.
Senator Scott, is your campaign, in your mind, if you don't meet certain metrics, would you encourage others as well as yourself to clear the field sooner, or is the plan to stay in it for as long as you can to give the people as many choices as you can?
Well, the good news is I saw as people understood where we are, they wanted our voice to remain on the stage, and people have rallied around the campaign. We've been so thankful for Americans who've said, we want you in it. And frankly, they can continue to do so right now by going to votetimscott.com. We plan to continue this campaign because our voice is absolutely essential to doing what we haven't done but one time out of the last 8 national elections, winning the popular vote. That is what we must do in order to take this all the way to the White House.
Couple of things here quickly. Have you qualified for the stage November 8th? Buck and I are going to be down in Miami. Will you be up on that stage in a little bit over 2 weeks?
Well, Clay, Buck, let's get together a week from Wednesday in Miami. We will be on the stage, We have qualified. We look forward to seeing you and having a fist bump.
Okay, that'll be fun. We'll definitely meet up with you. Look forward to that. Last question for me, and Buck may have one more. We appreciate you joining us. We're talking to Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Second Republican debate. Seemed like Nikki Haley kind of took the gloves off and took a real swing at you. And I was watching it, and I know you guys have a good relationship in the past, but it was like, okay, like she's actually going to go there, because it seemed like she threw the first punch. Were you surprised by that? How would you assess your relationship with Nikki Haley right now as the campaign rolls on?
I will say, without any question, was I surprised by it? Yes, certainly I was. But the one thing I have realized is that I think it was the great philosopher. What was his name? I think it was John Rambo, who says she drew first blood. And so we have to remember that and respond accordingly. And the way we respond is not by being petty and being personal, but helping people understand what is already clear. The moderates are rallying behind her, and you will not become the nominee of the party being the most moderate candidate on the stage. You think about her initial response to the Palestinian refugees coming to America. She thought there was a way for us to vet them. You think about where she stands on the issue of abortion and the issue of life, not having a 15-week national limit. That means you allow for states like California and Illinois, New York to have abortion up until the day of birth. That is unconscionable, unacceptable, un-American, and certainly inconsistent with Republican primary voters.
Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, sir, always appreciate you, and hopefully we'll see you down in Miami soon.
Look forward to it. I'll look for both of y'all. Have a good one.